Hello everyone, bringing you the first in a series of interviews today which I've conducted with veterans of the Falklands War as part of the content I'm putting out for the 40th anniversary of the conflict. And today it's an interview I conducted with Mike Southall, who was at the time a private in 3 Para, went on to retire later from the British Army as a sergeant. And without further ado, we'll get into the main part of the video and listen to Mick's recollections of his experiences down south during the war.
Could you talk a little bit about your joining the army, obviously just before conflict broke out?
Yeah, well, I actually joined the army in 1980.
Right. Okay.
As a junior at 16 and 3 weeks.
Yes.
And we basically did what we did then. We did a year, but it was such a large intake that they split us down at the end into 2 platoons. Some went to a platoon 476. That's how our platoons work, you see, in numbers. And the rest, and other people to catch up, like the shooting team and the boxing team and that sort of thing, they all went to what was called 477 platoon. So we actually did a year and a half basic training.
I see.
And I joined the battalion on sort of February the 27th, 28th, 1982.
Yeah.
We were on spearhead, so we did Northern Ireland training, which is ironic because I wouldn't have been allowed to Ireland, you see. We were 5 Infantry Brigade.
And what were the preparations like leading up to that? I mean, issues of new kit, any specific sort of... No, nothing at all.
Just no new kit. No. I was man at Q&M's basically. I had no new kit at all.
No.
Just basically what I'd been issued in training, and I don't remember getting any additional equipment until we got on the camber, to be honest.
Right. Okay. And what was going through? I suppose it's the classic question: is what was going through your head when you were sailing south? What was going through your mind?
Well, the whole thing was just because of my age, and I suppose because of my inexperience. It was all like, really, really surreal and like, dead exciting. Going down the M3, of course, towards Southampton with motorcycle escorts and all this sort of thing. I was only 17. I was like, oh, my neck, this can't be real. I thought we'd just go around the Isle of Wight 10 times and come home.
Yes, yeah, not expecting
nobody thought it would get for real. No. It was just really surreal the way everything it was so quick as well. That did impress me with the speed with which we got everything ready. I mean, the camber was cruising at 1 minute, one day, and then seconded on the next day, and they were building helicopter pads over the weekend, and so quick how it evolved to us getting onto the ship and moving. It was just so quick.
Yes.
Yeah.
And obviously you mentioned being issued some new kit, and obviously training and so forth was ongoing on camera.
Yeah,
whilst
on the camera,
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. It was basically it was like a self what's the right word? Sort of self-segregation between ourselves and the Marines. They had their bars, we had our bars.
Right.
Okay. And we just basically booked areas of the ship to carry out different training, like weapon training, first aid training, communications training, because a lot of the guys in Fleet Para had never seen the Klansman radio.
Oh, right. Okay. Interesting.
Well, no, because they never had it.
No.
They never had it. We had to, I believe, we got ours from the TA.
Right. Interesting.
Now, I was familiar with the radio because it was what I'd gone through training with, but the battalion didn't have the radios. So, we had to, a lot of the guys had to be sort of trained on the radio and all that sort of stuff. We went through sort of every aspect of training you can think of: weapon handling, first aid, map reading, some other, like really interesting lessons like conduct after capture, Geneva Convention, that sort of stuff.
Of course, yeah. And at what point, I guess, did it sort of sink in that this is for real, or rather that there's not going to be another solution to this? Was it at the point that the landings were taking place, or did it?
It was as soon as the Belgrano went down.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
As soon as the Belgrano went down, it was like a tangible change in the atmosphere. Everyone's like, right, this is for real. And then, of course, shortly afterwards, the Sheffield got hit.
Yeah.
And we're thinking, well, that's 2 large vessels gone down. There's no going back here now. There's no pulling back at all.
And in terms of your sort of, what were your feelings? You were saying it was surreal early on, obviously, as you say, that seeing this and the motorbike escort and getting on the ship and actually heading south. When that change of feeling amongst the men happened, what were your feelings at that point? Did nerves kick in at that point, or was it?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I think everyone was nervous. I mean, some
Mm.
people in the battalion had waited 20 years for this opportunity.
Yes.
I'd waited like 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everyone was sort of everyone was sort of doing those extra checks of kit, extra
Yes.
checks of equipment. Even though they just checked it 10 minutes ago, they just went back and checked it again, and just made sure that everything was in place. And
Yeah.
this is serious now, guys. I suppose people started taking what's the right word? I suppose people started to sort of their level of alertness sort of heightened straight away.
Yes.
Yeah, because this is real. This is real now. All the talk is over. We're going to be doing something. Yeah,
Yes.
we are definitely going to be landing at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
I landed in daylight,
Mm.
which was not the best way to do landings. As
No.
the air raids were coming in, we were actually in landing craft. The young Navy guys, they couldn't get the landing craft in, so a lot of us went in up to our waist as we landed. So we were wet before we even got on the islands.
Yeah.
We transferred from the Canberra to the Intrepid.
Yes.
And we were on the Intrepid for probably about a day, give or take a bit. You'll have to excuse me because some of my timings might not be absolutely spot on.
No, that's...
I'm sure you can understand that.
Over the years, absolutely, yes.
We were on the Canberra for about 24 hours. I remember myself, a couple of NCOs and a couple of other young private soldiers. We were priming an entire company's grenades just in the cookhouse, in the galley. Get that right, the Navy.
Yes, yeah.
in the galley, we were just priming grenades and just basically dropping them into sandbags. HE grenades just sat there doing we must have done 100 of them at least 100. At least, and we were just doing lots of other prep on there, like prepping our weapons, etc. The Navy fed us. The Navy looked after us on Intrepid. They did what they could. It was incredibly confined, obviously.
Of course, yes.
They just had an extra sort of 600-700 guys put onto their ship. So it was a bit cramped, but they looked after us. They fed us, and then when the signal came, we all moved into different landing craft, made our way to the shore. But it was unfortunate because of delays that we did what was considered to be a big mistake, I suppose, is landing in daylight.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But luckily, the landing was not opposed.
I was going to say, I've read comments previously that if the landings were opposed, it could have been would have been extremely difficult and messy.
Yeah, we might not be having this conversation.
Exactly. Yes. Quite so.
Yeah.
Quite so.
Up on the hills around San Carlos Bay. We dug in there. I think we stayed there for about a week carrying out patrols. I was in Corporal Ian Bailey's section in 5 Platoon B Company. That's called Bailey MM. And we just carried out patrols, routining in defence. Air raids going on, air raid warning red coming up all the time. The Argentine Air Force ignoring us and obviously attacking the ships.
Yes. Yeah.
It is quite a strange thing to see a capital vessel on fire. But yeah, we had a perfect view of San Carlos Bay and the air raid and the battle that was going on between the guys on the ships and obviously the Argentine pilots. Who, to be fair, and it has been said before, the Argentine pilots were brave.
Yes.
Yeah, we started walking. The walk. I'm sure some people will be watching this and hopefully think the same as me. The walk was just horrendous. It really was. It's such a long way. And the ground is very, very similar to the Brecon training area in South Wales there and Dartmoor, etc. And ourselves and 4-5 Commando broke out and we walked in one direction. The Marines walked in the other. And it was really, really, I found it really hard work. Yeah. Really hard work.
And carrying a heavy load at that point as well, obviously not making things.
I was probably carrying around 70, 80 pound, but I was only 17. And it was, I know the age shouldn't matter, but I'm afraid it does. I was only a young guy. So, although I was fit, I wasn't really that strong and all the rest of it. Yeah. So that weight for me was a little bit, probably more difficult for me than it would have been for a big, strong corporal or whatever.
Yeah.
We started off all sort of, what's the right word? We started off all sort of, everyone keeping a space and all the rest of it. And eventually everyone just said, close up, guys. We're going to have to get through this. And we lost a number of guys going into the ground and, up to their waist, hypothermia, bad feet, and everyone said, oh, well, that's admin. It's not if you're out there. It just, you could have been the best soldier in the world. I know some really good guys who not got cut out, but their feet just gave up on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, the biggest enemy we had at that stage, Simon, was the boot.
Yes. Yeah. The DMS boot.
Compressed cardboard. Absolute waste of time.
If the boot's disintegrating under your feet, then it's not providing you support or anything else, is it? So.
Oh no, it just didn't. It just did not. And everyone I've spoken to has said that one of the biggest problems we had was our boots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was impossible to dry them out.
Yes.
On the march, it was the terrain. It was like what they call rock rivers. So,
right.
It would be rivers made up of rocks, and trying to get over those. No disrespect to anyone, but sometimes, with the best will in the world, some people might have got the navigation wrong. So we might have, gone the wrong way and that sort of stuff. No criticism of anybody, because that's what happens in war.
Yeah.
Everyone rants and raves if you get lost on Brecon Train there, but this is war. If not lost, excuse me, if people go wrong, they go wrong. We just sort it out. You just sort it out. But it was so tiring. The distances involved. I've heard very many different distances, but it's anything between 80 and 100 miles. Is how far we
cross the island and all
the islands.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was no roads then. There is now, of course, but there was no roads then, and it was just like you said. Almost every step you were going in up to your ankles.
Yeah. And perhaps you could run us through a bit of your recollection of that, the battle itself, your experience of it.
Well, we got our orders, and then obviously the corporals got everyone together, or the section commanders got everyone together, gave them their orders and how it was going to go. It was about 8 or 10 miles from Estancia House where we were established doing our admin until we actually got to Mount Longdon. You could see Mount Longdon. You could actually see it in the distance. We walked there. There was a couple of, quite humorous stories. The way there was the only way to get across the Muddle River was 2 ladders that these 2 guys from the Royal Engineers genuinely carried 2 ladders. I believe the 2 ladders are still at Estancia House. Carried the 2 ladders, and everyone just went across those ladders. I believe, not in my company or my platoon, I believe some people actually fell in the water and fought the battle soaking wet. So, that was quite difficult. I was in one section 5 platoon that was just going up the centre of B Company's advance from the start line. Up the centre or the spine of Mount Longdon to the right was 6th platoon, and to our left was 4. We were on the start line. We got the command to fix bayonets, which was a little bit, bit iffy, or not. I was thinking, wow, okay, if I've got to use this, then so be it. It wasn't the best thing. It wasn't the best order I've ever heard, but everyone just clicked them on, and that was it. Then we were told to advance, and unfortunately, one of our NCOs in 4 platoon, unfortunately, trod on a mine, which alerted the Argentines. The Argentines had no idea we were there. Okay, and we moved. As soon as that went off, then obviously they alerted the Argentinians. Okay, we was told to just run. Okay, so I did. Okay, I had the 84 at the time, which was a really big bonus. Yeah. I had the 84 at the time. Yes. And I just legged it, and unfortunately, I found myself in the rocks on my own. I got separated. Just in the chaos, I just ran, and by the time I got into the rocks, okay, some other people had gone. It wasn't hard to get lost, if you know what I mean. So I got separated. I went to move one way, but there were some Argentinians. They engaged the rocks. They engaged me, but hit the rocks in front of me. So I thought, I best not go that way. They look a bit busy. So I'll try the other way. So I went the other way, and after about 5 or 10 minutes, thankfully, I met up with the rest of my section with Corporal Bailey. But then by that time, I'd realised that the platoon had been split up as well by a big sheet of rocks. And on the left-hand side was Corporal Bailey and Corporal McLaughlin's section, and on the right-hand side was Sergeant Ross and Corporal Eaton's section. So even our platoon was split up, and we couldn't get back together because of the size of the feature. So they had their battle, and we had ours. So even then, the platoons were broken down into subunits. The noise, the fighting in the, like you say, the fighting is sort of such enclosed spaces. You could go 10 meters and you would lose contact with somebody. or you would lose it. You certainly lose line of sight with them. Yeah, absolutely. We as I joined Court Bailey and Court McLaughlin, we started moving up what is now known as Grenade Alley, where it's quite a narrow gap, and they were dropping grenades on us. I think it's because of the softness of the ground that they didn't cause that much damage. Okay, and the first couple they dropped, they weren't taking the pins out, I've been told. So apparently somebody up there must have said, you forget to take the pins out. Then they never forgot. They dropped a few down. Okay, that's my recollection, of course, and I've been told what happened. But then we're moving up Mount Longdon, and I'm with my section, and we came to this boulder, and I'm sort of on the left-hand side of the section, and I sort of peered round the boulder, sort of stuck my head out very, very, very cautiously, and there was someone stood there. So I just sort of looked round, and I just turned round to either Court Bailey or somebody. I genuinely do not remember who, and I just said, "There's somebody out there." So they said, "Well, you can shoot him then." So I went round the rocks, and I put about 5 or 6 rounds into this person. Came back round the rocks and said, "They're not there anymore." So as we moved round, there they were on the ground. That's where the guy was, on the ground. And I was like that. Wow, okay. I genuinely thought, I didn't realise what I'd done. It was just in the heat of the moment. Training kicked in, all the rest of it. And, unfortunately, I was just a little bit quicker than him. But somebody patted me on the back and said, "Well done," and all the rest of it. So, but it's, I was like that. Christ, this is serious. And as I said, I keep going back to it, but for a 17-year-old lad to be doing that, when somebody said shoot him, I didn't even think.
No.
Then I'm just recalling my own experiences here. If you speak to other people, they may say, "Oh, well, we did it." We moved along there, and that's when we seen these bunkers, and Court Bailey said, "Who's got the 84?" So I did. So he said, "Right, well, get him up here." So I sort of stumbled up with this bloody thing, and he was like that. There, bunkers, hit him. So right, okay. And Boots Meredith was the number 2, if I remember rightly. He loaded it. I did shout standby, but unfortunately, Taff Edwards, one of our Section 2 ICs, was actually behind the 84 when I fired it. And I still talk to Taff now, and he took his head off. So I fired the 84. It did hit the bunker. A lot of people might say it, but it did hit the bunker. And then I was told to reload and fire another one. So I went to reload, I reloaded and I went to fire it, and it clicked. So I was like, right, misfire. And I thought, like, what you're supposed to do in peacetime, of course, what you're supposed to do is sit there for a minute. Of course, not a good idea in battle to sit. So unfortunately, they started to engage us. And I remember somebody sort of kicking me or dragging me out of the way, going, "What are you doing, you idiot? You can't stay out there." Okay, so I sort of hit the floor with this 84, all over my helmet, all over the place. Like, "You idiot," because all the rounds were sort of hitting the rocks around us. And someone said, I said, "What should I do?" And I said, "Just throw it away." So I literally threw an 84 away with a heat round in it.
Live, potentially.
Yeah. And I believe Craig, a good friend of mine, Craig Harryhausen, said, "Funny enough, I was the other side of the rocks and I could hear you lot." He said, "I could hear you shouting, stand by." He said, "I said, well, that was me." Then a couple of guys went forward and cleared the bunkers. I didn't. A couple of guys went forward and cleared the bunkers. At the time, your training kicks in. Yeah. And that's why training is so important. Sorry to sound that way, but it's true. Training is so important because it should kick in, and it did. And all I recall now, okay, I never gave it a single thought at the time. Just straight into, like an automaton, straight into it.
Yes.
Rather than thinking, "Oh, what about this? What about that?" And my main motivation, as I was talking to somebody last night actually about this, my main motivation, I didn't want to let anyone down. Certainly didn't want to let my regiment down, and I certainly didn't want to let anyone down. So that was one of my main motivations, was not to, to put on what's the right word? Put on a good display, shall we say?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and not let my mates down or my corporals and all out down.
And so camaraderie comes into that to a degree as well.
Camaraderie comes into it again. I don't think. Well, very, very few people fight for Queen and country. I think they fight for the guys up the next to them. I genuinely believe that. Some people go, "Oh, that's not right." Well, I genuinely believe that. And both 6th Platoon, I've got really good friends in 6th Platoon and 4th Platoon. We're both having it really, really hard. Really, really bad.
Yeah.
You know, we weren't the only ones that were coming up against enemy positions or enemy soldiers that, you know, were resolute, to say the least, in their defence of London.
And this is something I think has been a little bit mischaracterized over the years, is there has been in some instances, people have said, oh, you know, the Argentine conscripts, they didn't put up any resistance. So, you know, it was, which, you know, I've read other accounts, and obviously you're saying now that certainly wasn't the case in certain instances.
That's why my company lost nearly 67% casualties, because no one put up a fight.
It's crazy.
I do love it when people say that. So how come my company was down to about 30 blokes then? I think the best way I've always summed it up for myself is they were as patriotic and as keen on their cause as we were on ours. Yeah, they firmly believed that they were fighting for the right thing, and so do we.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the way I've always sort of rationalised it for myself. The young guy, they didn't run off. I'm sure some did, but a lot of them didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. So a tough fight, obviously.
Well, it took us at least 12. It took us nearly 18 hours to take the mountain, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's a long old battle. I know there's been longer battles since in places like Afghanistan, etc. 18 hours at night, you know, up that mountain. It was still quite hard, quite a feat to achieve, but also quite a difficult thing to do.
Yes. And I'm assuming most people watching this are at least somewhat familiar with the Battle of Mount Longdon, but obviously to point out it was a night attack as well, which is.
It was night with no night viewing aids.
No,
we didn't have PNGs. PNGs were around, but they weren't issued to us. The Argentinians had them, but we certainly didn't. No, so it was just a case of, you know, everyone being a link man, shouting everything down, etc.
Yes, yeah, and sort of firing at muzzle flashes and so forth when you saw them.
Absolutely, yeah. And hoping they were the enemies.
Yes,
yes.
In the confusion, which you've
a little bit chaotic,
and well, the confusion and the chaos you've already sort of described there. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's lots of I mean, I don't know how long you've got. There's lots of things that people who unless they read James O'Connell's book, there's a lot of things that people don't realise, like about Sergeant Mackay's attack, about the casualties, the aid post, the casualty evacuation. You know, and just how bad the actual battle was. It was an extremely brutal battle.
I would be very interested to hear, and I've certainly got time to listen, so please.
It really was. I mean, Ian Mackay's assault went forward, a recce patrol, or what was supposed to be a recce patrol, turned into an attack with Cuttle Bailey, as I said, my section commander, who received the MM for his actions. Sergeant Mackay received the Victoria Cross. And again, it's written down in places. John Lewis, just reached out in the dark and grabbed the first hand that was next to him. And it just happened to be me, because by this time, 4 and 5 platoon had actually joined up to make a unit. Because the 4 platoon were also separated from, couldn't establish it as one unit. We joined up together to make one bigger unit. So John Lewis was actually 4 platoon. He grabbed me. We went round with another gentleman who's now a Colonel, Sully Aladji, and we went round and we found Cuttle Bailey. Cuttle Lewis, or John Lewis, told Sully Aladji to treat Cuttle Bailey. So Sully stayed with him and treated him. He'd been shot 3 times, once in the hand, once in the hip, and once in the neck. So Sully did a great job there. Cuttle Lewis then not dragged me, but then took me with him, and we found Sergeant Mackay on the position. Cuttle Lewis confirmed he was dead. Now, Sergeant Mackay was actually my platoon sergeant in depot. He was the guy who passed me out the depot.
So strong feelings at that point.
Oh yeah, I felt awful. I couldn't believe the guy was dead, to be honest. Yeah. He was such a good guy in the depot. He really was. So Cuttle Lewis confirmed that. The Argentines then seen me and Cuttle Lewis, and they started to engage us. So we moved back round. We picked up Sully Aladji and picked up Cuttle Bailey, and it was then that the order came from company headquarters via the awesome Sergeant Major Johnny Weeks. I'm sure you've heard that name before. He said, right, get the casualties together. And Corporal McLaughlin was also there. Corporal McLaughlin was giving orders all night. You know, I'm sure you've heard that name before. giving orders all night, leading assaults, doing everything. I mean, literally everything for our sort of our group of guys. Some people were closer to him than I was, but I was forever hearing his voice, keeping people going forward. Just don't want to lose the momentum. But then there was a lull in the battle where we were allowed to get our casualties back. And that's when we realised, myself and my sort of small group of younger soldiers realised how bad it had gone for us, because we'd actually lost 3 of our friends. One had been killed I believe, in one of the initial bursts, Private Burt. Private Scrivens had been treating another Private Gross. And while he was treating him, he got shot. One of the other 17, might have turned 18 by then, Mark Howes Thomas was there. He's seen all this. We went out, and I ended up next to, or near Mark Howes Thomas, on the stretcher with him, trying to get Neil back to the regimental aid post. Neil had been hit in the chest and was in an awful lot of pain, an awful lot of trouble. We were all trying to reassure him. Obviously, he wasn't the only casualty, but it was a casualty that I dealt with. We got him back to the regimental aid post, where Corporal Phil Probert was under an awful lot of pressure, because the casualties nobody realised, I don't think, how many there actually were until we started getting them back.
And concentrating them in one place, yeah.
Oh, and it was concentrating in one place. And Neil was in an awful lot of pain, so Mark didn't want to leave him. I didn't want to leave him. So I stood at his feet while Mark sort of comforted him at his head and spoke to him. And that's where the young lad died, unfortunately. It was his 18th birthday. Yeah, really harrowing.
Sobering
that
stuff.
That has affected me ever since. I won't lie. Yeah, it has. That was the worst thing of the night. Yeah. After that, we regrouped, reorganised, and the company commander decided we were just going to make one more push along what's commonly known now as the sheep track, and that's where we moved down. Whatever was left of the company, basically, it was just a mixture of everybody. There was people from other companies as well, from support company and from the signals platoon, etc. It was just whatever it was. It's a gang of guys, and we're just going to keep going forward. And that's when we got, for want of a better phrase, an ambush front, where 2 guys just ran out, fired automatic bursts of what I'm assuming would be FN 7.62 straight down the line. They hit loads of people, including killing one guy, and that was John Crow. Killed him instantly. We got back from that position, or back from that location. Corporal McLaughlin fired a 66, which allowed people to move. He knelt up, fired a 66, straight into a bunker, which is a feat in itself to hit anything with a 66. And he fired it into the bunker. And we then started to evacuate those casualties back into what is called what's known now on the mountain as the first bowl, and that's where B Company sort of regrouped what was left of us. It was about 25, 30 of us, something like that. I'm not entirely accurate with the figures, and we were in the bowl there, sort of trying to administrate ourselves, redistribute ammunition, do the classic British soldier thing, get a brew on. While we were told that A Company would then push through and take the remaining sort of kilometre or the kilometres. It's a very long feature. It's about 3 or 4 kilometres long. And A Company pushed through us, actually taking our ammunition off us, because B Company were just basically, and I do remember one very, very good friend of mine called Ned Cameron came through, and he was told to get the ammunition from B Company. And he just said to Sergeant Major Weeks, "Where's the rest of the company?" He said, "Corporal Cameron, this is it," or something along those lines. And Ned Cameron, like I say, a very, very good friend of mine, he sort of went, right, okay, looked a little bit shocked himself, to be honest. He looked really shocked that this was what was left. Yeah, it was, and that was B Company's sort of role, not finished, but that was where we were taken over from A Company.
Yes.
They took over from us, should I say, excuse me. Yeah. They took over from us because we were basically not a spent force by any stretch of the imagination, but we were, we took a hammering, to be honest. And we organised ourselves. We had private soldiers promoted in the field from private to lance corporal to become section commanders. We only had one NCO left. and that was Colin Edwards. And I nearly done him with the 84, bless him. But it's I know how silly, but he was the only NCO left. Yeah, all the others have been either killed or injured. We tried all we could. We really did. We tried everything. We Mark, myself, and other people there as well. So Steve Jelf was only 17. I was only 17. I think Mark was still under 18. I'm sure he'll correct me on that. Even he was under 18. It was everyone getting on the stretcher, trying to get him up, move him as quick as we could. And unfortunately, the injuries that he sustained were just so, serious that he just couldn't survive. From there, a company moved through us.
Yes.
And you're probably best talking to somebody from a company about that. I
next stage.
I couldn't speak with any great authority on what a company did, but I know they went through us and carried on taking the remainder of the mountain. So the best people to speak to that will be hopefully somebody from A company.
Of course.
For us as B company, what happened then is the artillery started. Well, for everybody, not just for us, of course.
Yes.
The artillery started for everybody. And the Argentines, I believe, had 3 155 guns, or 105. They had 3 guns lined up on Longdon, and they just basically did a creeping barrage over and back for around 36 hours, something like that. And they actually, unfortunately, they injured Court McLaughlin, who was Court McLaughlin was injured by an attack by a missile. I believe a Stinger missile. I may well be wrong on that, which also injured a very good friend of mine called Grant Grinham, and Andy Stedman, another good friend of mine. He got injured in the back, and Court McLaughlin had quite a bad gap in his shot, but he wouldn't go to the RAP. No, he had to be ordered. No, you will go. And he said, no, I'll be all right. And people, not me, of course, but some people will know you've got to go. And unfortunately, on the way down, he actually got taken out by the Argentine artillery and killed. Yeah. And for what he did that night, and this is not to diminish the efforts of anybody else. I believe he should have got awarded something, which is an ongoing thing, I know. But in my view, he definitely should have been awarded something for his actions, during the battle. But just kept everyone going.
Yeah.
He was that one guy you wanted to, every unit's got one. I'm sure they have. That guy you will follow anywhere. And he was that guy that kept everyone going. Yeah. Wouldn't belittle any other medal. He should have got something. It wouldn't belittle any medal that was awarded. No, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting anybody got awarded something they shouldn't have. That's for other people to discuss. But in my view, Court McLaughlin should have got something. We stayed on the mountain for about, like I say, for about 36 hours. And then we were told B company were, so I think we were in reserve again. Somebody with more tactical nous than I had at 17 will know. I think we were at the reserve. I was bombed up like something out of a film to walk into Port Stanley. I had an SLR, I had an SMG on my back. I had grenades in every pouch you can think of, because we thought we were going to fight for Stanley. Okay, and on the way down, we sort of got told to wait, and then all of a sudden they're saying, the message got down, there's white flags over Stanley, that sort of thing. So, and then we were told to put our berries on, and that might have been on the road. We were told to put our berries on, and we sort of noticed that sort of 2 and 3 paddock were sort of getting closer and closer to Stanley together. I sort of said, can you go further? No. So basically it was just a race. Okay. And I'll leave it to the historians to decide who got there. I know I didn't, but
no.
It was definitely, as long as I'm not really bothered, as long as it was a maroon berry that was into Stanley first, I'm not really bothered. Yeah. Didn't bother me as long as it was 2 or 3 paddock. And yeah, first to land, first into battle, 2 paddock, 2 battles, 3 paddock, and then first into Stanley. So I was quite happy with what we achieved. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what were your experiences on moving into Stanley? I mean, what did you find? What was your, presumably...
There was a few casualties on the way, not from us. There was a few bodies, some injured Argentine soldiers, which our medics treated. Okay, they treated them, even casevac'd them, etc. Young, as you said, they're only young guys. They're on the side of the road, injured. Maybe their colleagues left them, or maybe they got injured. It doesn't matter. Our guys treated them. we moved into Port Stanley. We started to occupy houses, basically. We were told to go into people's houses. B Company went into a house. There wasn't enough room in there, so about 4 of us went into a garage, okay, which probably something thinking, oh, God, it must have been cold in there. Well, actually, it worked out really well because we had loads of room. So we could sort of spread out. So it actually worked out in favour for us. Myself was in there with another 17-year-old, another really, really good guy called Steve Jelf. I've already mentioned him. And a guy called Ron Duffy, and one other, I can't remember who it was. And we were in the garage, and we were just like administering ourselves. Okay, you know, things happened, like people came along with fresh food and rations and all that sort of stuff. Chance to dry our socks out, chance to get a hot meal and a brew. We administrated ourselves. There was like a, for want of a better phrase, a sort of no man's land between the Argentinians and the British, which I believe was patrolled by both Argentinian and UK military police. Okay, or perhaps a Navy provo, something like that. And eventually, I believe the surrender was signed on the 15th or 16th of June with General Moore there, Brigadier Thompson, and obviously General Menendez signed the surrender. And basically that was it. And that's when, you know, we started like collecting all the Argentines' kit, you know, shipping them off. They were taken on I believe it was a Canberra to Montevideo in Uruguay, handed over to the Red Cross there and all repatriated. We had the unpleasant task of going back up to Longdon, maybe once or twice. I remember going up at least twice just to, you know, clear the area as best we could, you know, of any personal equipment, stuff like that. We went up there a couple of times. We stayed in the garage. It was giving us a chance. We had a couple of cans of beer, okay. Even though I wasn't old enough to drink, as somebody pointed out. You're old enough to drink that.
Just an insane thing, really, but yes.
I think you might have earned it. But,
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that was good. I try to have a look at it with a bit of humour. And someone said, you're old enough to drink that. Yeah, I am actually. I'll get off. Send a telegram home, get our mail forwarded to us, all that sort of stuff, and get prepared for us to make our way back to the UK. Yeah. All those sort of, you know, we probably did an awful lot of administration with paperwork, handing in ammunition, of course, making declarations that we've got no live rounds or empty cases, believe it or not. That sort of stuff. All has to be done, or not, has to be done. So all that sort of administration was carried out. And we also held a church service in Stanley Cathedral, which I believe was attended by, well, I think two para were there as well. So 2 and 3 para held one. And then I believe 4-2 and 4-5 Commander, they also held a church service maybe the day after or something like that. There's no segregation. It was just easy to say, right, you know, you guys have it one day and we'll have it the next. Yeah. It was just like sorting stuff out. And the one thing I found amazing is just how Port Stanley just looks like, it's completely different now, of course, but at the time it just looked so small and really weird. You mentioned before, could you see Port Stanley from Mount London? Yeah, you could. And the weird thing was you could see it at night. So we're on London, getting artillery, waiting for 2 para to attack Wireless Ridge. Remember, 2 para went into battle twice. Yes. Waiting for 2 para to go into Wireless Ridge, and we could see Port Stanley, lights flickering, vehicles moving. And we're, you know, 2 para are just about to go in for an assault. And we're watching vehicles moving. You know, it's just really, really weird. I didn't see 2 paras assault go in. I didn't see 2 paras assault go in. I only heard it. Yeah.
And what was your experience on, you know, what did you think when you returned home? What was the feeling like? Because I've heard some people say it was very odd getting back to the UK after.
It was very odd. Quite rightly, the army's moved on a little bit from this kind of thing, but we were just basically sent home. Yeah. Just, you know, we didn't. I don't remember even handing weapons in. I think we had them in bundles on the coach, and we just threw the bundles into the armory, and then right off you go. So I went to my room, opened my box that I boxed up in case the worst happened, got any clothing I had, and went to get. Believe it or not, there was a train strike on, so we couldn't get home.
Of course, early 80s, yes, yeah.
Yes, so we were given bus tickets, but by the time we got to Tidworth, we'd missed the last bus. And one of the guys I shared a trench with in the Falklands, Gaz Lloyd, or Scouse Lloyd as I knew him, his parents came to pick us up. came to pick him up, and he said, "Oh, where are you going? Oh, Chester." He goes, "Oh, I'll drop you off on the way." Sad part is the vehicle broke down about 3 or 4 miles out of Tidworth. I'm sure it was a marina. He'll be able to tell me off for that. I'm sure it was a marina. And the AA guy came along, and we never had, Scouse's mum and dad never had the sort of relay cover, that sort of stuff. And his mum just went, "Well, these 2 guys just come back from the Falklands." And the bloke was like that. Right, I'll sort it out. And they actually drove us all the way to. They dropped me off just outside Chester at a big set of traffic lights outside Chester, and I just walked into the nearest pub and got a taxi home from there. Yeah. It was just really weird that we changed vehicles at Birmingham, just that kind of stuff. We had a lot of stuff like the taxi driver who took me from the pub home, and there was a big party outside, and he said, "Oh, what's that all about?" So I just come back from the Falklands. He said, "Oh, not paying you for the taxi. Don't pay for the taxi then." Yeah. We did actually go round once because we pulled up at first, and I just went, "Go past," because I didn't want it. I didn't want it, to be honest. I couldn't be bothered with it because I thought at the time, okay, it might be great, but I didn't see anything to celebrate. So I said to this taxi driver, "Can you keep going?" And then we went to our local pub, and he just said, "Right, okay, do you want a drink?" I had a drink. And I said, "Right, you can take us back there now." So I just needed a little bit of, just take a deep breath here, because everyone's going to be going, "Oh, well done," and all the rest of it. Yeah. And I'm thinking, families of people that I know whose sons aren't coming home. So I just didn't feel like celebrating at the time.
No, but quite understandably, yeah.
Yeah. It was a bit surreal, and everyone was nice to you for a few months. It's soon debated, but people were nice to you for a few months. Yeah.
And I believe what you said, obviously you stayed in the army at that point.
I did, yeah.
And could you just sort of, perhaps as almost as a closing thing, you'd tell us just in brief a little bit about your career in the army from that point?
Yeah, I left B Company. I went to the anti-tank, spent a few years in there. Went to got promoted to Lance Corporal. Went back to a rifle company. Did all my courses. Got promoted to sergeant. Was a local colour sergeant at somewhere called Purbright. And I was just about to leave the army when I got a phone call telling me that I could go onto what's called the long service list. So I was just about to get out, and a Major Bryant rang me and said, "Oh, are you Colour Sergeant Southall?" I said, "Well, I'm not a Colour Sergeant. I'm only while I'm in this job." He went, "Well, we're looking for someone to do a training wing in Holland." And I obviously thought it was a wind-up, so I put the phone down and I went, "Yeah, piss off." Put the phone down. Then he rang me back. He said, "I'm telling you now, do you want this job or not?" I went, "Yeah, go on then." So I ended up doing another 6 years. So I got out in 2008. And I know people will say, and this is quite funny, people say, "Yeah, but anything under 18 doesn't count." Maybe not the person you should say that to.
No.
Yeah, under 18 doesn't count. What a bet.
Yeah.
So no, I left in 2008. Yeah, since then I've done a number of jobs, to be honest, and now I just teach first aid. I work part-time, just teach first aid. When I was in the military, it's one of the things that I never ever avoided was any first aid course I could do. Yeah, I did as much as I could do. All your team medics, your company medics, your RMA 3, and I never did any more. But you know what I mean, all that sort of stuff. Anything I could do, I did. Yeah, anything I could do, I did.
So there we are. I want to say a big thank you again to Mick for taking the time to sit down and recall some of these experiences that he had down south during the war, and obviously some of the details there of his subsequent career in the army as well. It was very much appreciated, Mick. Thank you very much for sitting down and taking the time. It's greatly appreciated. Obviously there will be more of these interviews coming up going forward, and if you'd like to see those, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell with the notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below in the video description. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And as ever, if you would like to get in touch with me but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down in the description as well. That's everything for this video, so until next time, bye for now.